Good evening, everyone. Before we get started, I do want to mention that this is being recorded, so we're all okay? Thumbs up? Fabulous. Okay. My name is Sarah Felice, and I want to welcome you to the Lipa Ratner Museum of Art. I am actually the curator here. I recently started back in April, and my introduction this evening starts with Dr. Greg Bird, who was the first professor in my inbox when I started. Coincidentally, if you don't know, April is National Poetry Month, and Dr. Bird said, "Sarah, I read about your background, and I can't wait to start working with you." And I'm like, "Thank you. I have no idea who you are, and I've been here for 5 minutes." That being said, I did respond and I said, "Well, if you've read about my background, then you know I want to know who the key Latin writers are in this area." And he said, "Oh, you need to talk to Yuly." So I do want to highlight and welcome Yuly Restrepo Garces back to SPC. She is an SPC alum, so thank you. And I know we have a lot of students with us tonight, so if you don't know about their work, then I'm going to start telling you about it. So Yuly Restrepo Garces was born in Medellin, Colombia, and came to the United States over 20 years ago as an asylee. Her writing has previously appeared in Tampa Bay Noir, Cut Bank, Catapult, Prism International, Natural Bridge, and Zone 3. She is an Iowa Writers Workshop graduate, a McDowell Fellow, and a professor of English at the University of Tampa. We're honored to have her here this evening. And when I had a chance to meet her over Zoom a few weeks ago and start talking about a reading program here, I said, "Yuly, if there's anyone in the world you could read with in this community, who would it be?" And that was Gloria Muñoz. So Gloria, thank you so much for being with us. If you don't know about Gloria, she's a Colombian American writer, translator, and advocate for multilingual literacy. She's the author of Your Biome Has Found You and Danzirly from University of Arizona Press in 2021, which won the Ambroggio Prize and the Gold Medal Florida Book Award. Her other honors include an Academy of American Poets Poet Laureate Fellowship, Hedgebrook Fellowship, being a Macondista, Highlights Foundation's Diverse Verse Fellowship, Lumina's Multilingual Writing Award, a Las Musas Mentorship, the St. Pete Arts Alliance Muse Award, Creative Pinellas Artist Grant, and attending the Tin House YA Writers Workshop. Through Moonlit Música, the company she co-founded, Munoz writes and composes music for bilingual children's programming in audio, film, and curriculum. She is proud to be St. Pete's first Latina poet laureate. Welcome, Gloria and Yuly. Thank you.
Yuly, can't think of anyone I'd rather read with. So sweet. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you all for being here and for spending your Friday night with us. I can tell you're great students, those of you who are here, because you're dedicated to poetry on a Friday and to fiction, which is radical. It's awesome. Long story short, I was pulling into this driveway and I remembered that a dear friend of mine, Cleta Clark, who passed away right before the pandemic, really suddenly from like a rapid bout of cancer, donated her entire collection, or like a big part of her collection here. So I got to kind of walk around, like see her hallway and like living room walls here, which is really cool. And I am like, so thank you for that. It's really apropos because I'm starting with a poem called Moonbird, which is a poem dedicated to Jay Hopler, who is my late mentor. And it's also dedicated to Cleta Clark. And if you get a chance, her art is like down this hall on the back wall. And it's like, there's a red chair. If you see the red chair, you know you're in Cleta's hallway. Moonbird. How many bird songs can we fit in our throats while living? A cry of loons, wake of buzzards, riot of robins. I imagine a piety of doves carried you across the moon, the most poetic O. Yes, O. Every sadness is an exclamation. Each small kindness, a bird crashing itself into wind. In other words, a caesura. What more proof of life do we need in these bodies than the tangle of red knots that makes us measure the distance from Earth to moon? Birds knew about space travel before us. We, with our slow beating hearts, and we are still lives to them, especially to the seagulls who pity our pear shapes like the doves, but more sunstruck and blinding. Oh, how they grackle and peck at our grease lips and fries. We cannot hide from the parliament of owls that stares at us through night. Birds can be assholes, but they know the weather also before us. I write this while waiting for the rain to pass, then I stay in my car to watch the birds patter back into the sky. Some rosaries have feathers. Oh, you left in a sun shower, winged, surely or metaphorically, and a gulp of swallows is still stuck in my throat. And Jay loved collective nouns for birds. So if you're a lover of birds and collective nouns, there's some pretty fun ones out there. So you can look those up. During the pandemic, I was having trouble writing poetry. I went far into the fiction lane. I don't know why. But I could write metaphors. So I had a notebook that I was keeping, and I would just write a metaphor. Whenever I thought of a metaphor, I was like, I'm just gonna write a metaphor in here. So I was this metaphor notebook. And now I'm back to writing poems, which I'm happy about. But this is a just collection of metaphors at random from that notebook. Lust is a snake that eats its tail, then body and neck and head. Worry sounds like bleeding sheep being sheared with blunt blades in blunt hands. Guilt is the gum I swallowed 7 years ago that still clings to my small intestines. Regret is an unbroken wishbone rotting in its corpse. Hate is more boring than this faculty meeting. Fear is the still air before cicadas start screaming. Luck is a sinkhole that ate the casino and spit out the chips. Love is stirring the full pack of cheese into the hot macaroni. I write a lot about news. I think poets read the news all the time. We just know what's going on. We're observers of the world and everything that's happening. And this one you'll quickly catch on, I think, to some recent current events in here. This is a super new poem. All of these are actually new, which I'm excited to be reading new stuff. We can't explain new gravitational waves, but we know the orcas are not happy to have been chocolate-dipped ice cream bars melting onto sunburned arms at Florida theme parks. They think splash zones are ridiculous. And no, they don't get royalties for sleep machines or for being the stars of the Holocene while we recline, eat popcorn, and scroll memes of them sleeping and ramming into boats that keep us up on nights when we feel microscopic in a galaxy where we'll die knowing so very little about so much. But orcas don't care about our existential crisis or the CBD gummies we take to ease ourselves to sleep. when wonder turns to worry and windows open to supermassive black holes, humming the future back to us through ripples that wobble and pulse in their native tongue. Orcas laugh, spout, nudge, and pummel the sailboats of the silliest species. We're the longest car crash they can't stop watching, so they sleep with one eye open. So if you're a poet and you are a poet who has had a child or who has had animal, babies, offspring, little animals living in their house, you know that lit mags are notorious for not wanting poems about babies or animals ever, unless you are maybe Hemingway, who could put anything anywhere. Yeah, so this poem is a little bit about that, and just a little warning for anyone who's sensitive about this stuff. It does have a GUN in it. When the lit mag rejects another poem about motherhood, my uterus folds into a gun. Although I've never carried one. I don't even like to say the word around our daughter who grew toes in there. Instead, we say pun when we chat about the news at dinner, but they're everywhere, puns. At the store, a small boy with puns for hands shouts, gotcha, 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 down an aisle of hula hoops, bubbles, floaties, and water puns. At the checkout, women's bodies on health magazines are covered by plastic panels, but puns, big ones, are on full display by the candy and gum. We pass billboards for the pun show on the way home and a line of protesters that wraps around the Women's Center. Nothing is easy about motherhood is written on a sign in all caps under a heart line zigzagging red over a shouting mouth. I turn up the volume and a bird sings, pío, pío, pío in Spanish. Fear laps at me like the shoreline, slowly eating this state that's shaped like a pun. Nothing is easy about motherhood, but it is worthy of poems, magazines, billboards, and songs. So when I pull into the driveway, I decide to stick to my puns and send out another mother poem tomorrow. For now, we unload groceries and make plans to go to a concert, our first big one since becoming parents. Neither of us says the what if we're both thinking. Pew, 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 our daughter hops on the sofa. Pew, 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 pew. Thank you. And I'll read a few more. I'm going to read some short ones. I have this, like, I'm working on this poetry collection. There's an alter ego kind of character, kind of like a Wiley, Dream Songs. John Berryman's Dream Songs has a Henry kind of like alter ego in here. There's like a little bit of a wry alter ego character. Her name is New Money. And these are some poems that deal with money. Mobility. New Money dreams of retiring her parents, but stocks won't vest before they lay to rest. Math never adds up. New Money wears wolf masks to rob bank, flip homes, cut corners, eats raw steaks, gargles gold schnapps with bros till she breaks. New Money gone-girled herself. She's not dead, just dodged jail, got a book deal, dog, and new celebrity name. Milk teeth. This money plant unbraids itself, on a windowsill that holds a parade for snails and spiders who knew to invest in purple flowers and the moon. You were born in the wrong species to invest in those things. Besides, you know the only chips worth counting are the ones collected by the milky edges of your teeth. A slide, a swing, a smile, so wide that you never notice anything is missing. And I'm going to read two more here. This one is a villanelle, and this is from a YA novel in verse set in the near future. It's not super important for this poem. All you need to know is this person has gone through a big loss, and they're kind of figuring things out, and they're having trouble trying anything new, like anything new. And here they're on a roller derby rink being pushed into trying it out. If you hate it, leave. But what if you love it? Punk music blares as skaters glide and roar. It's magic here, or it might be the punk and day glow. I'm unsure. Entering the rink, I hold my breath. Punk music blares as skaters glide and roar across the surface of a neon planet. I'm unsure. Entering the rink, I hold my breath. I belong on the sidelines with the skirt bag fans. Across the surface of a neon planet, I skid, I buckle, I brace myself for impact. I belong on the sidelines with the skirt bag fans. The teenage skirt bags crash, slam, spin, dash. I skid, I buckle, I brace myself for impact. Mom says that there are places in the world that feel sacred. The teenage skirt bags slam, crash, spin, dash. Janine skates over, takes off her helmet and shouts. Mom says that there are places in the world that feel sacred. It's magic here, or it might be the punk and day glow. Janine skates over, takes off her helmet and shouts, if you hate it, leave. But what if you love it? Thank you. And this last poem, it's an ekphrastic kind of. I'm working on a series of like everyday ekphrastic poems. So like you see something on the internet, social media in your life, and can kind of treat it as like a kind of snapshot, like piece of art. And ekphrastics for students in here, it's like when you write either with, alongside, towards, in response to, against, around a piece of artwork of any kind, sculptural, mural, like anything. So in this everyday ekphrastic comes from a photo I saw on the internet of a birthday party in a piñata, and there was one little girl in the back, like all these kids are like, oh, like piñata, like football players, you know, they're like ready to go. But there's like one little girl with bangs, just like the straight across, like little kid crayon box bangs, just like sits, like standing there, just like watching, like observing everything, like really intently. And it's written from her point of view. Yeah, that's all. Oh, I will say one thing. So there's a poem by William Carlos Williams that is in response to Bruegel's painting of like, it's like a pastoral scene with Icarus. You can see like Icarus like far in the background falling. And I was reading and looking at a lot of ekphrastic poetry, like as I'm writing this everyday ekphrastic series. And in that painting, like the butts are very accentuated. And William Carlos Williams writes about like their bottoms. So I was working with this I was working with a friend, and we were kind of co-writing, and I was writing this poem, and she's like, you gotta put butts in there somehow. Somewhere there needs to be butts in this poem. So you'll hear it when it gets there. Shy girls piñatazo. Allo, allo, give me that palo, allo, hear me? It's bangs in the back, yes, I bite with these fangs, and I'm ready for my thwack. So move over, ponytails, with your frilly socks and sit down, big boss. Yeah, I see your watch. I've been waiting for my turn. You'll never squeeze me in an urn. Nah, I earn my way in blood. Thwack, thwack. I'm La Vampira de la Florida, 365 days of sun. It's hard to be a goth in a place with so much sun. UV rays fade paper, but this war is one. Okay, war might be a little dramatic, but till now, life's been kind of chaotic, like a musical by Lin-Manuel. It's full of hustle, trauma, and magic. I might be quiet in class, but this piñata's got a riot inside it. So shake your booty off beneath the disco ball moon and watch me slay, not like Bay, I mean literally. Oye, make way for La Vampira who'll eat ya, cause this piñata is mia and I'm not gonna miss my thwack. Thank you. Thank you so much. Please join me in welcoming my friend, the incredible Yuly Restrepo.
Thank you, Gloria. I had some thoughts during your reading. One, I think I was at the meeting that was more boring than hate. I was also the girl standing away from the piñata, but that's because I was terrified that I was gonna get hit with the stick. There was something else. I forget. I love butts too. Oh, I remembered. What Gloria didn't tell you is that the novel in verse is going to be published. She just got a book deal. So everybody please congratulate her. And it's true, I'm Gloria's biggest fan in the world. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to Sarah, to the museum, to SPC, which is my alma mater. And I was actually remembering that I graduated exactly 20 years ago. So yeah. And I also, for that, I want to thank Greg Bird once again, because I took his creative writing class one summer and we were in his office and he was kind of like, you should think about doing this, like actually writing. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, English is not my first language. I'm like, I don't know how to do it. But he was really supportive and I am glad I listened to him back then, 20 years ago. Imagine that. Now I have to sit at boring faculty meetings. So I'm gonna read from a story that was published a couple of years ago in a series called, well, the name of the anthology is Tampa Bay Noir, and it's part of a series of noir anthologies that are set in different cities. And this one is the only piece of fiction that I have written that is set outside of Colombia, which is where I was born and raised. So this is the only thing I've written that is anywhere outside of Colombia. And it's of course set in Florida, more specifically Largo, which is where I lived for like 20 years or something. So I'm just gonna read from the beginning, so there's nothing to set up, okay? All right. So the title of the story is Pablo Escobar, which is meant to be provocative. On the Tuesday of my second week of 11th grade in America, Nicole found me eating on the stairs by the soda machine and introduced herself. Several weeks later, I'd be clinging to the back of her sweater as we said goodbye for the last time before she got on a plane to somewhere in Oklahoma. But that Tuesday, I was just scared to talk to her. The school floor plan dictated that at lunch, students had to gather in a big rectangular space in the middle of the building, and there were few places where I could eat without being out for everyone to see me. The previous week, my cousin and her friends, who were in the 10th grade, had made fun of my ratty, faded Chuck Taylors and middle part, and the fact that I was wearing jeans instead of a skirt and my general FOB-ness. After that, I stopped sitting with them at lunch. I wanted to talk to no one, especially some girl who couldn't speak Spanish. Nicole put a lot of coins in the soda machine and pushed some buttons and took out 2 plastic bottles with what looked like blue liquid in them. She walked over to the stairs where I was failing to take delicate bites out of what the cafeteria sign said was a Sloppy Joe sandwich. Nicole handed me one of the bottles. The liquid inside was indeed electric blue, and the label said Fruitopia. Do you remember Fruitopia? Yeah. You're in my French class, she said. I don't think you've seen me because I sit in the back. You're always in the front. Nicole was short and chubby with brown hair that she had styled in stiff curls and small incandescent blue eyes. Even as my heart raced with the responsibility of answering, I thought of my mom, who would have loved the color of Nicole's eyes, as she had been loving the blue eyes of people we encountered in the overly air-conditioned grocery stores of Largo since we'd come to America a few weeks earlier. Nicole was wearing cargo pants, a tight navy t-shirt, and crisp white sneakers that she later told me were K-Swiss, as if that was supposed to mean something to me. She'd soon be my first real American friend, and I'd lose her just as quickly. Thank you, I said. We're in French together? Yeah, I sit in the back. Might as well, because I never know the answers to the questions. You know all the answers, but I can never hear you when you say them. I know a little French, I said. Before leaving Colombia, I had been in college for a semester studying foreign languages. My French was good, but English was what I would like to study the most. Now it made me feel dumb when Americans spoke to me and I couldn't keep up, or I pronounced a word I knew well in a way they couldn't understand, so silence became my refuge. Nicole opened her soda and drank 3 big gulps, pointing with her eyes at my bottle, asking me to do the same. The soda tasted like cotton candy. I thanked her again. Where are you from? She asked. When I told her, she said she didn't know where Colombia was, but that some cousins on her mom's side were from the Virgin Islands. South America, I said. She nodded. Outside, a blindingly bright and hot late August day raged, but any natural light that entered the building did so through a row of small windows high on the walls above student lockers. The spotless white floor, the blue lockers, the cafeteria tables, all had the sheen of fluorescent lighting. Did you know there was a shooting at the school a long time ago? Nicole said. Someone shot in here? Yeah, my dad told me 2 kids brought guns to school and started shooting people at lunch. I think the principal died or something, but it was a long time ago. Anyway, they were fucking crazy. I kept trying in vain to eat daintily while Nicole told me tales of the place I had come to live, where I had come to live. She told me about the rainbow stain in the shape of the Virgin Mary that had surfaced on an office building window in Clearwater, about a town full of psychics and mediums, about alligators in people's swimming pools, and ghosts in an old hotel that was now a university building in Tampa. She said her dad was a huge nerd and liked to collect things, all kinds of things, including these bizarre Florida happenings. She said we could eat together from now on and that I could go over to her house whenever I wanted. That night, my mom and I dragged a beige leatherette sofa we had found on the curb of our street into our duplex. It was the only piece of furniture we now had, aside from a TV dinner table my mom's boss had given her. The previous night, the aunt we had come to stay with had yelled at my mom for not doing anything around the house, and we'd had to leave and move into the apartment we have found only a few days earlier. We had planned to move into it after we got some furniture. My aunt didn't work and spent all day watching tennis matches on TV and sipping vodka out of an iced tea can and crying while showing me clothes she had worn when she was younger and thinner. I didn't know what to do with all that, so I pretended I had something else I needed to do. I didn't even have the guts to tell her she was being unfair to my mom, who worked 2 jobs. Eventually, I understood this was what made being friends with Nicole so easy. She expected nothing of me but what I could give her. She didn't even expect me to talk. The morning I met Nicole, before I'd left for school, my mom had given me a piece of paper with the address of the apartment we were moving into. It was 1 street over from my aunt's place, a street full of duplexes just like ours, whitewashed with overgrown front yards and chain-linked fences and old cars parked outside. Ours was a 1975 Chrysler Cordoba a coworker had sold to my dad for $500. It had no air conditioning. I told my mom about the Virgin on the window, and she said we could go see her when my dad felt better. I also told her about Nicole. She said she felt happy I had made a friend, and that it was good that she spoke English and not Spanish because my English would improve. We dragged the sofa into the living room. Then I laid a sheet over it and claimed it as my bed for the night. My mom had already put some thick blankets and bed covers on the carpet of the master bedroom for my father, and that's where she'd sleep too. 3 of us drank iced tea and ate a pizza my mom had bought at the grocery store and heated up in the oven. The pizza was topped with tiny spicy meatballs, which I hated, but the iced tea was sweet and cold. After dinner, I finished what was left of my homework and lay on the couch ready to sleep. The neighborhood felt wholly quiet in a way I wasn't used to. At night, my neighborhood in Medellin was full of sounds of passing cars and neighbors' conversations and music, and even after people had gone to sleep, the steady whistle of the night watchman. Now all I heard was the hum of the air conditioner and the fridge, which made the apartment feel emptier. In the middle of the night, I went back to the bedroom to ask my parents if I could spend the night on the floor with them instead. The couch, it turned out, was riddled with ants. My dad's accident happened 3 days before my aunt kicked us out and 4 days before I met Nicole. Only a couple of days after arriving in the States, he got a job at a recycling plant. He hadn't even had time to visit the beautiful Clearwater beach my aunt kept telling us about before he went to work. The day of the accident, one of the plant's conveyor belts stopped working, and my dad, who had been a mechanic back home, offered to take a look at it. He climbed onto the belt, which was about 2 stories high, and removed stuff that had gotten it stuck, at which point one of his coworkers, who didn't realize my dad was up there, turned on the belt, and my dad fell into the machine at the end of it. His whole body went through the grinder before anyone could help him. He broke no bones, but he bruised some ribs, and when my aunt brought him home from the ER, he looked like someone in one of the many stories I'd heard back home of people being given scopolamine and taken to various ATMs around the city until their bank accounts were empty and they didn't know who they were or where they were. His dark hair was gray with debris, and his eyes were bloodshot, and his shredded work pants barely covered his scraped up legs. Upon seeing him, a flood of heat and tears rose in me, and he said, "Don't worry, things can only get better now." I've never seen him so frail. Even on the day his brother was murdered on a street corner for helping as a messenger for one of Medellin's branches of the Liberal Party, at a time when being open about any kind of politics made you someone's deathly enemy. My dad had been sturdy as he grieved. Now the sight of him told me the opposite of what his mouth said, and that's what I should have listened to. If I had, I could have protected myself at least, but now it was me in high school after having attended college, my mom working 2 housekeeping jobs that kept her away from home from 6 in the morning until 10 at night, and my dad trying to heal his bruised bones even as he slept on the floor. We shared an empty duplex and we had no one but each other. Or at least I thought so. My parents wanted me to think otherwise. How do you think we got this car? My mom would say, and who helped us get this apartment? We were sitting on the carpet, sharing another pizza. This one had only vegetables on it, and I liked it much more than the one before. Well, it wasn't our family, I said. Don't say that, my dad chimed in. If it weren't for your aunt, we wouldn't be here. Yes, but that's money you still owe, I said. And how are we gonna pay her now? I'll leave it there. Thank you. Do we do questions or? Okay. Gloria, do you want to come up here? Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Thank you for reading from your book. Because it gave us a strong perspective what it might be like living in Colombian streets. Taking apart like family story. Sometimes we don't listen, so we should read it.
Thank you. Yes, read it, please. Thank you so much. Anyone? Yes, in the back. I just had like an amorphous series of subjects. At the time, there was a program at the Clearwater campus called IDS, which was interdisciplinary, and 3 faculty members taught it, and it was amazing because you would study like literature in the morning and history in the afternoon and art, and it was like wonderful. So I knew that I wanted to like go into that general area of the humanities, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do until I took Greg's class. That's what changed it. Yeah. Yes.
Now from Dr. Bird's class into the Iowa Writers Workshop, what happened in between there that got you?
Oh, thank you. That's a good question. So Greg suggested that I attend the University of Tampa just because it was close. They had a good writing program. So that's what I did. And when I was there, I had a really nice group of mentors who, again, it would have never occurred to me to apply to Iowa, but they were like, you should apply to Iowa. So I did, and I got in. I don't know how, but it happened. So I guess the key is like people, encourage you and support you. That's how I did it.
There's some professors here from the University of Tampa too. If any of you are students,
Some people are here from UT.
Like I'm sure they'd be happy to talk with you.
Can I do a joint question? Is that reading?
No, I'm kidding. He's my friend.
This is teachers are here.
Gloria, the gun on top was equal parts harrowing and it's that lightness that you always inject into your poems. Can you talk a little bit about how how that poem came about and the decision to take something like fun, which is good, right? The decision to sort of marry those two together and dirty each of them in the process. I mean, I have friends who hate puns. And you think of them as violence of a kind, right? But I don't think you're one of them, right? Anyway, if we could live in that moment, just hearing you talk.
Yeah, I mean, I think that poem came from spelling everything with like a child learning language and learning words, like, and I have the vocabulary of a sailor. So I spelled a lot when she was born, like left and right, I was spelling words. And Mark's like, my husband was like, she's just gonna learn to spell these words that you keep spelling out. But that became one of those words that I was like, I don't know, it's like every day we exist and we balance the really horrific stuff happening in the world alongside the really beautiful and silly and wacky and like, the like friendships. Like there's so much beauty in relationships, whether they're friendships or whether they're like children or whatever. And it's that fine balance. So I think for me, it was like just playing with that space, which is like, I think the space I'm just interested in as a writer is like, everything sucks all the time, but it's also like really, really special and fleeting at the same time. So like, how do we navigate those things?
That's for you.
Oh, but I think you had a Julie question.
Well, I had a part two.
Yeah.
Yeah, you when you talk about the language and the remarkable story of yours, it feels crass to ask you like how the thing finishes. That's the question I would really ask. I want to
read it. It's so good. You have to read the whole thing. Yes.
Just that the incredible clarity and directness of the first person voice. Is that how you always sound? Or did it feel
No.
I think that makes sense.
No, I don't think so. I think, I mean, one of the most difficult things for me is the language of the story. Like I know what the story is doing on a plot basis. And language is always really hard for me. So I tried to make it as simple as possible, I guess, that's what I would say. And I think with this narrator, what was important to me is that because she doesn't really talk too much, she's afraid of like speaking English, basically. She's very observant, like she's always watching everything that's going on around her, right? And kind of internalizing it and making up her mind about it. And then when she speaks, she will say like 2 or 3 words. And if you want to know what happens, I don't know, should I tell you?
No, yes.
Okay. I will say something about the title. The title refers to a photograph that plays in the story. There's an infamous photograph of Pablo Escobar after he was murdered by the Colombian military and the DEA, and he's lying on a rooftop. And then like this was a huge thing in Colombia back in the 90s. I don't know if that was good.
Faculty here is in presenting art. And I find from poets in particular, we draw out our thinking, well, especially when we look at art or a photograph. And on my digital, I'm taking pictures of art and remembering photos and then telling the story. Again, I want to thank the faculty and poets like you for keeping the conversation. Second motion, Gloria, being a mother from the children's point of view, you had us laughing, you had us at roller derby, you had us with children. She had the courage to find a word that rhymed with guns. Something that I said with this gentleman here. it's hard as a point to find a word. It brings or associate the adjective to expand. You had the urge to expand on thinking.
I'll just chime in there. I was on a phone call I was on a Zoom call last night. With poet laureate, city poet laureates from across this country. And it was very cool. But we were in these breakout sessions. It was hosted by the Academy of American Poets. We were in these breakout sessions. And there was a poet in there who's, I forget what city in California, but he's a poet laureate in California. He is, you know, he has a couple of decades on me, like 4 decades on me. He's lived a lot, he's seen a lot. And he was saying that, like, he's asking about Florida, like everybody asks about Florida when you're on a Zoom call with people from around the state. They're like, what's going on there? Are you all okay? How are you doing? And he was just talking about what's going on. And he was saying, like, I think, you know, there's these words that you don't use in poems, like love and soul and passion. And he was like, what if we just reclaim those words to say whatever the hell we want to say right now, in a time in which, you know, language, unfortunately, you know, from working with programming for a city, and, you know, people are scrutinized right now for their word choices and what they put on their websites, like, especially if you're a nonprofit or a library or anything. So I just found that idea really interesting. And I'm like, I think poets and artists, you know, like, we can do that. Like, we know those words that are like the tricky ones, or the ones that we don't like. Nobody wants to hear a poem with soul in the middle of it. But like, he was like, what if we use this word? It's like, it's a code, or it's used for something else. And I was like, I love that. I was like, I'm gonna sit with that and tell poets everywhere to start like thinking of ways to do that, because I feel like we're gonna write, we're gonna make art.
Something that you would leave, is that right?
Yeah, Joe Donut, yeah.
Because I'm really interested in how, very interested in technology, stories, and videos, and the way that they allow us to talk about things that we can't talk about directly. Could you talk a little bit about that? That idea of story, how we share that.
Sure, yeah. You know Joe Donut, everybody knows Joe Donut, like, she's seen as like in South Latin American folklore. And it depends, like, from country to country, like, people have different stories, like origin stories for her, but she's mainly like kind of like a scorned woman, weeping. She's llorona, to cry. Llorar is the verb for to cry. So llorona is like the crier, like, she's always crying. Sometimes she has like a neglected like child like hanging from a breast, or like, or she just looks like she's falling apart. And there's so writing that poem, I started reading like every like myth, like origin story I could find for La Llorona. And because I cry at like the drop of a hat. I just like, I'm the easy crier. So I just always felt like, I was like, you know, I feel like Llorona gets a bad rap, like, and also like, you know, most women in mythology from around the world, it's like they became, you know, damned or pushed to the outskirts due to a man's decisions or choices, or betrayal. And one of the origins there had to do with the kind of like overtaking of the Mayan Empire, and like this like colonization of a person and a people, and what that means. And then I was like, well, in that case, like, we're all criers, like, we're all a little bit of Llorona. So yeah, that was born from there. I don't know if that answered your question, but it's fascinating. She's a fascinating image. There's like been some recent horror movies made, the one made like 2 years ago. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the good ones. I love horror movies, and there's like not been a good Jorona movie. Like, we need one. Any filmmaker is like, make a good Jorona movie. Yeah. So it just came from the research and from thinking about like this, like, again, it's like not taking myth or lore at face value. It's like digging, you know, thinking about the before and the before and the before and the before of it.
Well, it's kind of your approach to it, always thinking for some reason fall into the one.
Yeah.
And then start doing research. But I'm especially interested in students, because I think often when you come to writing a poem, that we're getting sleep. And sometimes it comes from other types of things.
Yeah, it's like a hodgepodge. That poem also has like this video. If you ever want a good cry, is the astronaut playing Life on Mars. No, Major Tom, playing Major Tom in outer space and just like floating around with an acoustic guitar, playing it. I watched that and I'm like instantly. So that, you know, it just is like a hodgepodge. Like that was part of it. Like it was just, and then it just leads you. I say poems work in spirals that like kind of do this, like, you know, like those breathing balls, like that are made out of lots of pieces of plastic that like bend together, open up. I'm like, poems work like that. They don't necessarily move linearly. And when you're writing one or building one, it's also like that. It's like you're over here, you're getting closer to the question, further away from it, etc.
So like she's and you're a long time in development meetings, so I'm not necessarily right. Is there any one in particular asking to see they both came together and had a reading style on this week? Is there anything inspired with me? Sort of looked up to.
I love Ross Gay. I think he's like the most joyous, like human ever. Like it's just amazing. And Sandra Cisneros, like I like both of them, how they read. Like they're just themselves, but like a little wackier and wilder and like I don't know, a little more musical theater versions of themselves, but just themselves, which I like. Yeah.
This is so it's the previous
I love Raquel. Yes.
I love and have this vibrant sentence. Also racializing as a softness there. So
Thanks. I like both of them a lot. So thanks.
yeah, they come together and have a reading style that was kind of.
That's amazing. Raquel won the Ambrogio right before me, and he was a great mentor, like during that whole process, like so open and genuine and just amazing. Yeah, Raquel Salas.
Oh, okay.
Can you talk about why it's in you? Because
Yeah.
Let's to kind of go along, they seem to be kind of expensive, thoughtful, and it's almost like this sort of in these on, almost like something you can't forget. I don't know your question.
Yeah, last semester I did a UT, I did kind of a conversation with other faculty, a couple of you were there. about a story I wrote recently about this woman who witnesses a murder. And then she starts to kind of have these nightmares about it. And I spent a lot of time thinking about how I was going to portray that, because it opens with that scene and we stay there for a while. And then she keeps having these nightmares, but they're not about the actual death, right? And I was like, well, is it like sensationalist or like, you know, like too gross? Or so I thought a lot about it, and then at the end I decided I'm gonna keep it. But I think one of the biggest moments I had thinking about violence, like violence in Colombian history since, oh my God, forever, kind of go hand in hand. But especially in the 20th century, it has been like 20th, and now it's like creeping up again in the last couple of years. And then like starting in the 40s, actually, Gloria's writing something about that too, like right before all these things started. It's just an everyday thing. And it was an everyday thing for decades, until the peace agreement was signed between the FARC and the government, and things started to get a little bit better. And then now we're here starting to kind of crop up again. But the thing is, like, I think that you can't half-ass violence. Like, it has to be shocking, and it has to be upsetting, because it is upsetting. But at the same time, the way that I experienced violence growing up, like I have had numerous like uncles that were killed in Colombia in the 90s. Like the anecdote that I mentioned in the story is actually based on one of my uncles. It just like, it was happening so constantly that it just becomes a part of life. And it never stops being terrifying, right? But then how do you keep going? You have to keep going, right? So I guess that's just how I think about it. It has to be like, if there's going to be violence, it has to be as like, it can't, at least for my writing, it can't be like cartoonish. It has to be real. It has to be upsetting. But there's also the acknowledgement that, at least for Colombians, it wasn't literally an everyday thing. Like, you would hear something different every single day on the news. And sometimes it would be your own family, right? I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of how I approach it. Yeah.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for being here and listening to us. One more thing, I will say, like, if you want to get to Iowa, just read every single day. Don't even write every single day, read every single day. That's not optional. Thank you.